Something's been luring people into bogs for over 1,000 years. A flickering light, just ahead, just out of reach. And every time you step toward it, it moves again. Experienced travelers have followed these lights to their deaths. Hunters, men and women who knew the land. And they still ended up face down in standing water, miles from anywhere. Scientists say they've solved it. Swamp gas, a chemical reaction. Nothing to be afraid of. But here is what they don't mention. These lights appear in deserts, on mountaintops, in places where there is no swamp gas, no marsh, no decay, nothing. And in several documented cases, the lights responded to the people watching them. I've spent weeks going deep on will-o'-the-wisp, the legend, the science, and in the cases that science still hasn't closed. I promise you, the official explanation is not the whole story. Welcome back to the campfire. The Latin name is Ignis Fatuus, foolish fire. Scholars called it that because only a fool follows a light into a bog. But the people who followed it weren't fools, and that's the part that should unsettle you. The name will-o'-the-wisp first appears in English around 1660. Will, just a common name, a ghost called Bill. Wisp, a handful of hay twisted into a crude torch. A wandering spirit carrying a light leading you off the path. But the thing it describes is much older than the name. Celtic folklore speaks of fairy lights, spirits that resent the living and take pleasure in pulling them into danger. In Ireland, they're sometimes called jack-o'-lantern, not the carved pumpkin, something older. Before pumpkins ever crossed the Atlantic, Jack was a man, and his name was a curse. The legend, Jack tricked the devil twice, too clever for hell, too wicked for heaven, barred from both. So he wanders in the dark between worlds, carrying a single ember inside a hollowed turnip. His light goes where the path ends. Every culture with marshland has a version of this. Dublin, the Lantern Man. In Germany, Irrlicht, Irrlicht. In Japan, Hito-Dama, Ghostfire. A floating blue flame said to be the soul leaving the body at the moment of death. In the Philippines, Sant Elmo, named for Saint Elmo, whose fire terrified sailors at sea. In Australia, Aboriginal tradition has carried the Min-Min lights for thousands of years, long before any Europeans set foot on that continent. The lights take their name from the town of Min-Min in outback Queensland. A pub burned down there in the early 1900s, and the locals said the lights that appeared after that were connected to the ruin. But the Aboriginal accounts go back far further than that pub, thousands of years further. The Kalkadoon people describe the lights as spirits of the dead, neither dangerous nor safe. Warnings, maybe presences. Non-Indigenous settlers who encountered them in the early 20th century filed written accounts of lights that paced their horses for miles, that matched the speeds when they sped up, that stopped when they stopped, that vanished the moment they were approached. In 1918, a drover in Queensland wrote an account of following a light for 3 miles across open country before it vanished, leaving him completely disorientated, with no idea where he was. He survived. He described it as involuntary, like something pulling him forward without his decision to go. The details change, the core doesn't. A light in the dark that moves and leads you somewhere you shouldn't go. This isn't just a metaphor. These are documented deaths. In 1865, a man disappeared in the fens of Cambridgeshire. His body was found 2 days later, a mile off the known path, face down in standing water. Locals reported seeing a light that night. A 13th century English chronicle from the fens records villagers warning travelers to stay off the marshes after dark, because the fire walks at night and takes the unwary. These aren't superstitious people afraid of shadows. These are records of people dying for reasons they couldn't explain, following something they couldn't stop following. So what's actually happening? The dormant scientific explanation: spontaneous combustion of phosphine gas. Organic matter decays in waterlogged ground, bacteria produce methane, and those same oxygen-starved conditions, phosphine gas forms alongside it. Phosphine can ignite spontaneously when it hits open air. Result: a small, hovering flame, drifting with air currents, moving when you approach because your footsteps shift the air around it. In controlled lab conditions, scientists have produced this effect. The chemistry is real, but in 2007, a team ran the field numbers on whether this actually happens in the wild. Their conclusion, the required conditions, soil temperature, bacterial load, oxygen levels, humidity, are so specific that spontaneous phosphine combustion is theoretically possible but practically rare. Rare enough that it probably cannot account for the majority of will-o'-the-wisp sightings on record. So what else? Foxfire, bioluminescent fungi on rotting wood, is real, glows faintly blue-green in the dark, but it doesn't float, it doesn't move, it doesn't pace a man across open ground for 3 miles. Ball lightning is real and documented, but it behaves differently, short-lived, erratic, and doesn't specifically appear over marshland. Optical illusions. Cold air layers refracting distant lights can make a fixed light look like it's floating and moving. This holds up for some accounts. Some. There's a newer theory that doesn't get much mainstream coverage. Plasma. Some researchers now believe that certain geological and atmospheric conditions can generate low-energy plasma, ionized air that glows, not hot enough to burn, not bright enough to illuminate, but visible in the dark, and capable of drifting with air currents and electromagnetic fields. This would explain why some lights appear in dry, rocky terrain with no organic decay at all. The Hessdalen researchers in Norway found high concentrations of specific minerals in the valley, sulfide ore in the rock on one side, copper and zinc on the other, essentially a giant natural battery underground. Their working hypothesis, the geological structure generates a weak electromagnetic field. The field ionizes air particles, the air glows. It's not proven, but it's the most serious attempt yet to explain the lights that appear in places where no other theory applies. And if it's right, it means these lights aren't rare accidents of swamp chemistry. It means they can appear almost anywhere, given the right ground beneath your feet. The Marfa lights of West Texas have been reported since the 1880s. Floating lights in the desert, no swamp, no decay. A 2004 study concluded that some lights correspond to car headlights on a distant highway. Some. The Brown Mountain lights in North Carolina have been documented since at least 1913. A German engineer filed a formal report with the US Geological Survey that year. Reddish, glowing orbs rising above the tree line. The USGS investigated twice. Their conclusion? Some sightings explained by locomotive headlights, others by brush fires. The sightings continued long after the railroad closed. The Hornet Spooklight, a bubbling orange light on the Kansas-Oklahoma border, reported continuously since the mid-1800s, investigated by the Army Corps of Engineers in 1946. Their official conclusion, unknown, still unknown today. And the Hessdalen lights in rural Norway, a remote valley where anomalous lights have appeared since at least 1981. Photographed, filmed, studied by multiple international teams. A permanent automated monitoring station installed in the valley. Current status, the lights continue to appear, and no single theory fully accounts for all the observed behavior. These aren't ghost stories. These are instrumented, documented, ongoing phenomena. And they don't have a... So, is it real? Yes, something is real. People see these lights. They photograph them. Scientists measure them. The Army Corps of Engineers files a report and writes, unknown. The question isn't whether the lights exist. It's whether we actually understand what they are. My honest answer, after going through all of this, is that swamp gas is the explanation that ends the conversation, not the one that earns it. It's the answer that makes the thing feel solved so no one has to keep looking. But the Hessdalen Valley has a permanent monitoring station, because the scientists who went there didn't feel like it was solved. And whatever killed those people in the fens, and pulled that drover 3 miles off course in the dark, it wasn't a chemistry problem. If you ever see a light ahead of you, in the dark, where no light should be, don't follow it. And if you enjoyed this one, hit like and subscribe, because we've still got a long way to go, and the path only gets darker from here. Drop a comment. Have you ever seen something you couldn't explain? A light, a shape, anything in the dark that had no business being there? Tell me what happened. Every legend starts at the fire, and we'll see you next time.